In 2014, I was producing videos in the church. Yang Min was the supervisor at that time. Once, I noticed that Yang Min's suggestion for a video was not quite appropriate. So I expressed a different point of view, but she insisted on her own opinion. I said that we could seek from the leaders, but I didn't expect that Yang Min would explicitly and implicitly accuse me of being arrogant and not accepting her suggestions. I was very confused at the time. The aim of seeking with leaders is to seek and clarify the principles to produce a good video. How can you say I am arrogant? Later, Yang Min promoted Ling Ping to be the team leader responsible for our work. During that time, we were planning to make quite a difficult video, and we hoped that Li Ping could fellowship with us more about principles and production ideas. But after actually interacting with her, I found that Ling Ping didn't really do much real work. She seldom asked about our work, and moreover, most of the time she guided us to make videos based on her feelings, without any principles. We revised the videos repeatedly, according to her suggestions, which seriously hindered the progress. I then reminded Li Ping to give suggestions in line with the relevant principles, as this would make it easier to achieve results and avoid rework. But Ling Ping not only refused to accept the suggestion, she also argued against it. She even pruned me for being arrogant and clinging to my own ideas. I thought to myself, problems and deviations are occurring in the work, but she is not leading us to summarize them and turn things around, nor is she pointing out a path of practice. She only reprimands and berates us. And when the brothers and sisters give her reasonable suggestions, she doesn't accept them. She is not fulfilling her responsibilities as a team leader at all. I wanted to raise this problem with Ling Ping. But then I also felt that Ling Ping was very overbearing. And I thought to myself, if I point out her problem, will she think I'm too arrogant in targeting her? In the end, I held back my words. Unexpectedly, Ling Ping later put all the blame for the poor results of the video work on us, and often berated and pruned us. Everybody was in a bad state. One day, Ling Ping compared our video with that of another group, and subjected us to a torrent of sarcasm and ridicule. I felt like Ling Ping had a prejudice against us, and always looked to pick fault over trivial issues and berate us for them. Everyone felt very pressured by Ling Ping's attacks, and one sister became so negative that she no longer wanted to do her duty here. I felt very sad at heart, and was also very angry. I thought that Ling Ping wasn't doing real work herself, yet was pruning and criticizing people blindly. I couldn't turn a blind eye anymore. The next day, I pointed out to Ling Ping her problem of pruning people casually. Unexpectedly, Ling Ping kept arguing her reasoning, and even said it was other people's problem. I then pointed out her problem by incorporating the principles of being leaders and workers, saying, you should fellowship on the truth to resolve the problems of your brothers and sisters. Simply pruning people and reprimanding them will not only fail to solve the problem, but will also make people feel constrained. In addition, you should listen to the suggestions made by your brothers and sisters. At the time, she agreed with a scowl on her face. But what I didn't expect was that afterward, she found a passage of God's words for us to read that exposed arrogance and conceit. In my heart, I vaguely felt that something was amiss. She didn't solve actual problems, and always made us reflect on ourselves instead, which meant that nobody would discern her. I really wanted to expose our problems, but then I thought of how Ling Ping had never once humbly accepted other people's suggestions, and she also had bad humanity. Once, she had developed a prejudice against a hosting sister and constantly judged her in front of us. I thought, if I point out her problems directly, would she develop a prejudice against me and judge me wherever she goes? Then wouldn't I be ruined, my reputation in tatters? When I thought this, I felt afraid and didn't dare to point out Ling Ping's problems. I even went along with reflecting on myself. Afterward, I felt self-reproach in my heart and wondered why I was so spineless. Later, during gatherings, Ling Ping did not fellowship about how she had reflected on and understood herself. Instead, she said that she had achieved good results when guiding the video work in other groups, and that the brothers and sisters all welcomed her. The implication was that we were constantly disagreeing with her because we were too arrogant to accept her advice. I really wanted to point out her problems, but I was afraid that if I mentioned them, she would lose face and suppress me, and so I didn't say anything. Afterward, I found that Li Ping was targeting me and excluding me at every turn. One time, when I was on the way home from a gathering, I bought some items for my sisters, and so I got back a little late. Ling Ping then dissected me in front of the brothers and sisters during a gathering, saying that I was taking the opportunity of going out to a gathering to indulge my flesh. Ling Ping often pruned me by deliberately picking faults and vastly exaggerating things, and I felt miserable and oppressed. I didn't even want to do my duty here anymore. However, when I thought about how abandoning my duty was a betrayal of God, I felt uneasy. So through prayer, I did not abandon my duty. I looked back on those few months of interactions with Ling Ping. She went through the motions in doing her duty and didn't resolve real problems. And her disposition was extremely arrogant. She didn't accept other people's suggestions. If someone like this continued to be responsible for the video work, she would only bring greater obstacles to the work and bring loss to the life entry of the brothers and sisters. I knew I should report Ling Ping's problems to the leaders, but then I thought about how she had been targeting me during this time. If I reported our problems again and she found out, then who knows how she would torment me. Besides, everyone could see Ling Ping's problems, and the other sisters hadn't given her any suggestions. So I thought that I had better stop getting involved. Moreover, Yang Min was the video work supervisor, and Li Ping had been promoted by her single-handedly. If I wrote a letter to report Ling Ping's problems, would Yang Min handle the matter fairly when she read it? Would they dismiss me and say that I was arrogant and conceited, always picking fault with others to disturb the video work? What if they cleared me out of the church? Wouldn't that ruin my life of believing in God? I even comforted myself by thinking that when the leaders discovered Ling Ping's problems, they would deal with her. Unexpectedly, my sisters in the group started to isolate me and distance themselves from me. Even Shayu, who I had often interacted with, became distant from me. I couldn't figure it out no matter how hard I thought. And every day I felt like my heart was being crushed by a boulder, making it hard to breathe. Many times I secretly shed tears alone, feeling extremely miserable and helpless. One night, Xiaoyu secretly told me that Ling Ping took advantage of me being out at a gathering to say derogatory things about me in front of my sisters. She also put all of the blame for the video work not achieving any results on me, asking my brothers and sisters to discern me. After being provoked by Ling Ping, everyone began to be wary of me. After I heard Xiaoyu's words, my heart couldn't calm down for a long time. Just because I gave Ling Ping some suggestions, she suppressed and excluded me. Now she's even forming a clique behind my back to exclude me. Isn't she just tormenting me? This person is so evil. I was very negative at the time, and my state was absolutely terrible. I was really afraid that if this continued, I would actually be dismissed and expelled. I thought that rather than being tormented by her, it would be better for me to resign and take up another duty, so I wouldn't have to face this environment anymore. However, then I thought about the resolution I had made before God, that I would be sure to make good videos to testify to God. Am I really going to give up this duty like this? I was not willing to accept that. Doing that would be too hurtful to God and would not show any loyalty to God at all. I felt very lost and didn't know how to experience this environment. In the midst of pain and helplessness, I prayed to God that He may lead me to understand the truth and find a path to practice. In May 2015, God's house issued work arrangements on how to discern antichrists and false leaders. When I read this in combination with Ling Ping's behavior, I realized she was a false worker and was walking the path of Antichrist. I read the words of God.
Almighty God says, "All of you say you are considerate of God's burden and will defend the testimony of the church. But who among you has really been considerate of God's burden? Ask yourself, are you someone who has shown consideration for His burden? Can you practice righteousness for Him? Can you stand up and speak for me? Can you steadfastly put the truth into practice? Are you bold enough to fight against all of Satan's deeds? Would you be able to set your feelings aside and expose Satan for the sake of my truth? Can you allow my intentions to be satisfied in you? Have you offered up your heart in the most crucial of moments? Are you someone who follows my will? Ask yourself these questions and think about them often.
In addition, in the 10 administrative decrees that must be obeyed by God's chosen people in the age of kingdom, God says, do everything that is beneficial to God's work and nothing that is detrimental to the interests of God's work. Defend God's name, God's testimony, and God's work. After reading the words of God, I understood that protecting the work of the church and the interests of the church is what God requires of us and is a responsibility that every believer in God must fulfill. During this period, I had not seen that Ling Ping was doing any real work at all, and was also suppressing and tormenting people, and her humanity was malicious. I was afraid of being tormented and dismissed, so I never dared to expose and report her problems. I didn't dare fight with the forces of darkness. In what way was I a person who was considerate of God's burden? I didn't protect things relating to the work of the church or the interests of the church in the slightest, and only considered my own interest. I was too selfish. Now, God's house had issued work arrangements for us to discern antichrists and false leaders. God's intention was in this, and it was also God giving me an opportunity to practice the truth. I could no longer be constrained by the forces of darkness. Therefore, I prayed to God. Dear God, I have constantly been miserable because of being suppressed by Ling Ping. I clearly have discernment of Ling Ping, but I don't dare to expose and report her problems. I'm too cowardly and lack the slightest sense of justice. I am incurring your loathing. Now, God's house has asked us to discern and report antichrists and false leaders. I know that your intention is in this, and I'm willing to rely on you to practice the truth and no longer be constrained by the forces of darkness. After praying, I felt more at ease and had the determination to practice the truth. One day, Sister Jia Yu, who was responsible for Ling Ping's work, asked me to go out for a gathering. I was very excited and felt like this was an opportunity God had prepared for me to practice the truth. I had to report Ling Ping's problems. Before I could even open my mouth, Jia Yu asked us, "How is Ling Ping as a video team leader?" I talked about Ling Ping's performance. She asked me to write it all down, and also asked the team members to write their evaluations of Ling Ping. At that moment, I was so excited that I nearly cried. I felt that God had heard my prayers and opened up a way out for me. Even more unexpectedly, after the sisters and the team read the relevant principles on discerning false leaders and antichrists, they also gained some discernment toward Ling Ping. Later, we fellowshipped and discerned together and wrote down Ling Ping's performance, her failure to do real work, and how she disrupted and disturbed the video work, and passed this on to the leaders. Soon, the upper leaders dismissed Ling Ping after finding out about and verifying the situation. After a while, Yang Min was also dismissed. We were all very excited and praised God from the bottom of our hearts for being so righteous. Later, Sister Yi Shen took charge of the video work. She often discussed video production ideas with us and encouraged us to actively fellowship, discuss, and speak freely about what was on our minds. Sometimes we put forward different opinions, and as long as they were suitable, she would gladly accept them. We felt that it was relaxing and liberating to do our duties in this way. And I was particularly happy that the results we achieved in video production were getting better and better. Afterward, I often thought about how I had discerned long before that Ling Ping was not a suitable person to be responsible for the video work, but didn't dare to report her problem. What corrupt disposition had been binding me? Later, I read the words of God.
Almighty God says, "When all kinds of evil people and disbelievers come out and play various roles as devils and Satans, going against work arrangements and doing something entirely different, lying and deceiving God's house, when they disturb and disrupt the church work and do things that disgrace the name of God and tarnish God's house, the church, you do nothing but get angry when you see it. Yet you can't stand up to uphold justice, expose the evil people, uphold the church's work, address and handle these evil people, and keep them from disturbing the church's work and tarnishing God's house, the church. By not doing these things, you have failed to bear witness. Then what is the root of your inability to handle and address evil people? Is it that you are inherently cowardly, timid, and fearful of trouble? This is neither the root cause nor the essence of the problem. The essence of the problem is that people are not loyal to God. They protect themselves, their personal safety, their reputation, their status, and their way out. Their disloyalty is manifested in how they always protect themselves, retreating like a turtle into its shell whenever they face anything, and waiting until it passes before sticking their heads back out again. No matter what they meet with, they are always walking on eggshells, have a lot of anxiety, worry, and apprehension, and are unable to stand and defend the work of the church. What is the problem here? Isn't it a lack of faith? You have no real faith in God. You do not believe that God is sovereign over all things, and you do not believe that your life, your everything, is in God's hands. You do not believe what God says. Without God's permission, Satan does not dare to move a single hair on your body. You rely on your own eyes and judge the facts. You judge things based on your own calculations, always protecting yourself. You do not believe that a person's fate is in God's hands. You are afraid of Satan, afraid of evil forces and evil people. Is this not a lack of genuine faith in God? Why is there no real faith in God? Is it because people's experiences are too shallow and their understanding of the truth too meager to see through these things? Or what? Does it have something to do with people's corrupt dispositions? Is it because people are too cunning? No matter how many things they experience, no matter how many facts are placed in front of them, they don't believe that this is the work of God, or that a person's fate is in God's hands. This is one aspect. Another mortal issue is that people care too much about themselves. They are not willing to pay any price or make any sacrifice for God, for His work, for the interests of God's house, for His name, or for His glory. They are not willing to do anything that involves even the slightest danger. People care too much about themselves. Because of their fear of death, of humiliation, of being trapped by evil people, and of falling into any kind of predicament, people go to great lengths to preserve their own flesh, striving not to let themselves enter any dangerous situations. In one respect, this behavior shows that people are all too cunning, while in another, it reveals their self-preservation and selfishness. You are unwilling to give yourself over to God, and yet you say you are willing to expend yourself for God, which is nothing more than a desire. When the time actually comes for you to stand up and fight against Satan to bear witness to God, and when you have to face danger, death, and various difficulties and hardships, you are no longer willing. Your little desire crumbles, and you do everything possible to protect yourself first. Afterward, doing some superficial work that you have to do, work that is visible to everyone. A person's mind is still more agile than that of a machine. They know how to adapt. They know when they encounter situations which actions contribute to their self-interests and which do not, and they are quick to apply every method at their disposal. Consequently, whenever you face certain things, your slight trust in God is unable to stand firm. regardless of how many matters you face, you fail to fulfill your loyalty and responsibility through your faith in God. Consequently, the final result is that you gain nothing. In every circumstance that God has set up for you, and when you have battled against Satan, your choice has always been to withdraw and escape. You haven't followed the trajectory God has indicated or set for you to experience. So, in the midst of this battle, you miss out on the experiential understanding and the truth you should have gained.
After reading the words of God, I felt pierced to the heart. I was one of the selfish and deceitful people that God had exposed. When an evil person disturbed the work of the church, I only considered my personal interest and showed no loyalty to God at all. I clearly saw that Ling Ping didn't enter into the principles in guiding the video work. In addition, she was arrogant, conceited, and clung to her own ideas, never accepting reasonable suggestions from her brothers and sisters, and constantly reprimanding people from on high, making them feel constrained. She had seriously delayed the progress of the video production work. I could see her problems, but I was afraid of offending her and being attacked and excluded by her, so I didn't dare to expose them. God permitted this environment to come upon me. His intention was that I would learn discernment, and that when an evil person disrupts and disturbs the work of the church, I would be able to practice the truth and stand up to expose and halt them. However, though I had enjoyed the watering and provision of so many of God's words, when I saw an evil person disturb the work of the church, I retreated into my shell and only thought about preserving myself. Although I wanted to report Ling Ping's problems to the leaders, I was worried that if the letter of report was blocked by Yang Min, or if Ling Ping found out about it, she would torment me even more harshly and even possibly expel me from the church. When I thought this, I grew afraid of everything and was filled with misgivings. Those behaviors of mine were not just down to cowardice, timidity, and fear, but were a result of my nature being too selfish and deceitful. I was too protective of myself. I was afraid of being tormented and expelled, so I sought only to save my own skin and turned a blind eye. I even thought, I have mentioned her problems to her, but she didn't accept it. I have tried my best. I'll just wait for the leaders to find out and deal with her. This way, I can protect myself from being tormented by this evil person. In fact, Ling Ping did not do real work, reprimanded others from on high, and oppressed her brothers and sisters. I had never exposed these evil deeds. I didn't dare report them to the upper leaders. And so the problem hadn't been solved at all. How could I say that I tried my best? I had followed satanic philosophies for worldly dealings, such as every man for himself and the devil take the hindmost, and sensible people are good at self-protection, seeking only to avoid making mistakes. And I was especially selfish, slippery, and deceitful. I stood by and watched with open eyes as Ling Ping disturbed the video work for over 6 months. I didn't protect the work of the church at the critical moment, and even preserved myself by tolerating an evil person, damaging and disturbing the work of the church. I didn't have any loyalty to God at all, and left a grave transgression in my wake. When I reflected on these things, I felt very regretful. I felt ashamed to face God, and I could only shed tears of guilt and self-blame. I didn't want to live by satanic philosophies for worldly dealings anymore. Later, I read a passage of God's words.
Almighty God says, "What is the attitude that people should have in terms of how to treat a leader or worker? If what a leader or worker does is right and in line with the truth, then you can obey them. If what they do is wrong and not in line with the truth, then you should not obey them, and you can expose them, oppose them, and raise a different opinion. If they are unable to do actual work, or do evil deeds that cause a disturbance to church work, and are revealed to be a false leader, a false worker, or an antichrist, then you can discern, expose, and report them. However, some of God's chosen people do not understand the truth and are particularly cowardly. They fear being suppressed and tormented by false leaders and antichrists, so they don't dare uphold principles. They say, "If the leader kicks me out, I'm finished. If he has everyone expose or forsake me, then I will no longer be able to believe in God. If I'm expelled from the church, then God will not want me and will not save me. And won't my faith have been for nothing?" Is such thinking not ridiculous? Do such people have true faith in God? Would a false leader or antichrist be representing God when they expel you? When a false leader or antichrist torments and expels you, this is the work of Satan and has nothing to do with God. When people are cleared out or expelled from the church, this is only in line with God's intentions when there is a joint decision between the church and all of God's chosen people, and when the clearing out or expulsion is wholly in line with the work arrangements of God's house and the truth principles of God's words. How could being expelled by a false leader or antichrist mean you cannot be saved? This is the persecution of Satan and the Antichrist, and does not mean that you will not be saved by God. Whether or not you can be saved depends on God. No human being is qualified to decide whether you can be saved by God. You must be clear about this. And to treat your expulsion by a false leader or antichrist as being expelled by God, is this not misinterpreting God? It is. And this is not only misinterpreting God, but also rebelling against God. It is also kind of blasphemous against God. And is misinterpreting God in this way not ignorant and foolish? When a false leader or antichrist expels you, why do you not seek the truth? Why don't you seek out somebody who understands the truth in order to gain some discernment? And why do you not report this to the higher-ups? This proves that you do not believe that the truth reigns supreme in the house of God. It shows that you do not have true faith in God, that you are not someone who truly believes in God. If you trust in the almightiness of God, why do you fear the retaliation of a false leader or antichrist? Can they determine your fate? If you are capable of discernment and detect that their actions are at odds with the truth, why not fellowship with God's chosen people who understand the truth? You have a mouth, so why do you dare not speak up? Why are you so afraid of a false leader or antichrist? This proves that you are a coward, a good-for-nothing, a lackey of Satan.
From God's words. I realized that there was another reason why I always hesitated and didn't dare to report Ling Ping's problems. It was because I didn't have faith in God and didn't believe that God is sovereign over everything, but thought that leaders, workers, and supervisors determined whether I could continue to do my duties and receive salvation. Therefore, when I saw the supervisor and team leader disturbing the video work, I turned a blind eye and cautiously tried to protect myself. I was afraid that if I offended them, it would make things difficult for me, and I would be tormented and dismissed. When I was being suppressed by Ling Ping, I felt very pressured inside and had to endure it silently every day. But I still did not dare to report Ling Ping's problems. I was afraid that Ling Ping and Yang Min would find fault with me and torment and expel me, so I would not be saved. It was as if my ability to perform my duty, my staying or leaving, and my future and destiny were all in their hands. In fact, even if they really had dismissed and expelled me, I could have found brothers and sisters who understood the truth to fellowship with, and reported and exposed their evil deeds to the upper leaders. God's house would surely have handled it fairly according to principles. However, even though I hadn't been dismissed and expelled, I still got utterly terrified anyway. I didn't dare to speak or report their problems. I didn't have any real faith in God at all. Was I not what God calls a coward, a good-for-nothing, a lackey of Satan? God has fellowshiped very clearly about the principles of how to treat leaders and workers. When leaders and workers do the right thing in accord with the truth, I should agree and accept. If they do things that are not in accordance with the truth and which violate principles, we can fellowship and point this out, which is helping them. If the leaders and workers do not accept this and continue to disturb the work of the church and suppress people, we should expose their evil deeds in accordance with God's words. We can also report them to the upper leaders until the problem is solved. This is a responsibility we should fulfill. By insisting on the truth principles, you may be suppressed and tormented, or even expelled by antichrists and evil people. But this does not mean that you have been expelled by the church or eliminated by God. Nor does it mean that you have no chance of receiving salvation. Moreover, the church promotes or dismisses people based on their consistent behavior, and the decision is made after a comprehensive assessment of the evaluations of the majority of the brothers and sisters. It is not up to any one leader or worker to decide. God's house acts according to the truth principles. I heard from Sister Yishin, the supervisor, that Ling Ping had been constantly trying to dismiss me. However, they found out through actual investigation that what Ling Ping said was not true, and discovered that Ling Ping was not doing real work, among other problems. I saw that in the house of God, truth reigns and righteousness reigns. This made me experience that antichrists or evil people cannot do anything to me without God's permission. I had believed in God for many years, but I didn't view people or things based on God's words, and didn't act according to principles. When evil forces disturbed the work of the church and harmed my brothers and sisters, I didn't practice the truth to protect the work of the church. Instead, I tolerated false leaders engaging in evil deeds and harming the house of God. Wasn't I acting as Satan's accomplice? If I remained unrepentant, I would ultimately be eliminated by God. and this would be determined by God's righteous disposition. As I pondered these experiences, I came to understand God's painstaking intention in setting up these environments. They were indeed very beneficial to my life entry, and my heart was filled with gratitude toward God. I also felt guilty and indebted for the transgressions I had made by not practicing the truth. I silently prayed to God, "Dear God, thank you for the environments you have set up for me. Previously, I missed many opportunities to practice the truth. I'm willing to repent and pursue being a person with a sense of justice who practices the truth and protects the work of the church." Later, I read a passage of God's words and was deeply moved.
Almighty God says, once the truth has become life in you, when you observe someone who is blasphemous toward God, unfearful of God, and perfunctory while performing their duty, or who disrupts and disturbs church work, you will respond according to the truth principles and will be able to identify and expose them as necessary. If you are someone who truly believes in God, then even if you have yet to gain the truth in life, at the very least, you will speak and act from the side of God. At the very least, you will not stand idly by when you see the interests of the house of God being compromised. When you have the urge to turn a blind eye, you will feel guilty and ill at ease and will say to yourself, "I can't sit here and do nothing. I must stand up and say something. I must take responsibility. I must expose this evil behavior. I must stop it, so that the interests of the house of God are not harmed and the church life is not disturbed." If the truth has become your life, then not only will you have this courage and resolve, and will you be capable of understanding the matter completely, but you will also fulfill the responsibility you should bear for God's work and for the interests of His house, and your duty will thereby be fulfilled.
From God's words, I understood that the heart of a person who genuinely pursues the truth is turned toward God. When things come upon them, they can stand on God's side and stand on the side of the truth. When they see others disrupt and disturb the work of the church, they do not ignore it, but let go of personal interests and act according to principles to protect the work of the church. As for things that are detrimental to the interests of the church, they can practice the truth to expose and stop them. They are bold in fighting against evil forces and can fulfill their responsibilities to protect the interests of the church. These are the only people who pursue the truth and have a conscience and reason. I warned myself in my heart that if I again noticed false leaders and false workers in the church who were not doing real work, or people doing things in violation of principles that were detrimental to the work of the church, I would definitely not be a people pleaser to try and protect myself. Instead, I would point out their problems, and if they didn't accept this, I should report it to the upper leaders until the problems were solved. Only in this way would I have fulfilled my responsibility. Once, I happened to hear that another sister in the church had also been suppressed by Ling Ping. After learning about the sister being suppressed by Ling Ping, I saw that Ling Ping's corrupt disposition had not changed at all, despite believing in God for many years, and that she would suppress and torment anyone who impinged on her interest. Moreover, she has malicious humanity, hates the truth, and has a very serious antichrist disposition. If someone like this stayed in the church, they'd only disturb the work and harm their brothers and sisters. Therefore, I submitted a detailed report to the leaders about Ling Ping's behavior of suppressing and tormenting people, and the facts of her evil doing. I hoped that they would deal with her according to the principles. Soon, the leaders wrote back to me and said that Ling Ping had been arrested by the police. Although she had been released, she was still under police surveillance. They had already collected evidence of Ling Ping's evil deeds and would deal with her according to the principles. When I read the reply from the leaders, I felt very at ease. Afterward, whenever I saw leaders or workers doing things inappropriately or in violation of principles, I was no longer timid and blindly obedient. Instead, I mentioned it to them in accordance with God's words. Though I suffered some hardships in my experience of being tormented and suppressed by an evil person, I gained some discernment of the truth-hating essence of antichrists and evil people. I also truly saw that God controls everything, and that my future and destiny are also in God's hands. I also actually experienced that truth reigns in God's house, and all negative characters who do evil and disturb the work of the church will be dealt with fairly. That I was able to achieve these gains and understandings is a result achieved by God's words. Thank God